Hey guys, today I'm joined by Jason Whaling, a fellow YouTuber and a epic content marketer. He's got a content sales funnel that he uses in his business, and I asked him to break it down for us here on the channel. Then we're gonna hop on a quick interview and walk through an example of how you can apply his system to local businesses so that you can see how you can unleash more value either for your existing clients or as a new service to offer to new clients. All right, Jason, take it away.
Thank you, Stuart, for that warm introduction and having me on your channel. So what we're gonna do now is go through those 5 steps for creating your content marketing sales funnel. And the very first step is identifying your ideal prospect and the value path. So when it comes to selling your digital agency services, chances are you have a lot of different types of customers and ideal prospects that you could go after. However, content that's designed to speak to everyone connects with no one. So what you want to do in this first step is identify who is the ideal prospect or customer that you're going to be targeting with this funnel. Of course, you can always come back to this video and Stuart's channel and redo all of these strategies for each one of your different ideal prospects or customers. But here, you just want to choose one so that your content really connects with the right person and pulls them towards purchasing your services. So the first step after you've identified that ideal prospect is identifying that value path. And that is identifying where your ideal prospect is now and where they need to be in order to see the value in purchasing your product or service. And very simply, this represents objections that typically come up in the sales process and information that they need to know or skills that they already need to have in order to see the value of your product or service. And so you want to write down a list of 10 common objections, and then you want to write down a list of problems that your typical ideal prospect has that don't always represent the results that your product or service delivers. And so once you have those, you're going to want to choose one from each category, and those will become your 3 cornerstone content pieces. Now, moving into step number 2, now that you kind of have a general sense of what your content's going to be about, it's time to shift your focus to the ideal customer and take a look at where they are on the experience level, because the value path represents a journey. The closer they get to seeing the value of the services your agency provides, the more advanced and the more information they already have in order to make an informed buying decision. So the further away they are, the more information they need. The closer they are, the less information they need. So what you want to do is make sure that you identify where are they on that path so that you create content that meets them where they are and brings them to where you need them to be. So a very simple example of this is think of Google Analytics, right? If you have a piece of content that explains the basic of Google Analytics, that's going to be completely worthless to an advanced prospect who is looking for digital analytics services and already knows all the basics. If you're targeting someone who's completely new and doesn't know anything about Google Analytics, then such a content piece would be extremely valuable, and they would see you as an authority or an expert, and that would bring them one step closer to purchasing your services. Whereas the advanced person's going to take one look at it and go, nah, I already know this stuff. And so you want to make sure that whatever content you're crafting is actually valuable to your ideal prospect. It isn't too basic and it isn't too advanced. So once you've decided whether they're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, what you're going to want to do is transform your topic ideas into a question. And this is where you're filling the content gap, because each one of those content ideas that you have represents a question that your ideal customer prospect wants answered. And so there's a gap between the question that they have and the result that the answer ultimately delivers to them. So it's not just enough to create content that answers a bunch of questions. It's to create content that answers the question and then shows them how to get the result that that question represents. And the easiest way to figure out what that result is to take those 3 questions that you have now that represent the 3 pieces of content that you're going to make and ask yourself, for your ideal customer or prospect, what is the result that they want to get out of having that question answered, right? Because they don't just want information, they want a result. They want to move themselves or their business forward. And so when you identify that result, you have a clear picture of the question that they're asking, the result that they want, and you know exactly what your content needs to be in order to fill that information gap. And that's how you create awesome content that really connects and over delivers value to your ideal prospect or customer. Now, the next step, number 3, is making sure that you optimize that content. So whether you're doing a YouTube video, a blog post, or a podcast, whatever the medium is, you make sure that you have all of your right keywords and you integrate extra phrases in there, because while you're not going to rely on SEO, one of the long-term advantages of the content marketing sales funnel is having these content pieces begin to rank and bring you organic traffic in addition to the paid traffic we'll be talking about in step 5. So just make sure, step number 3, you optimize the content as much as possible for search engines or ranking on whatever platform you're targeting. Now, the next thing you want to do is make sure you have a clear call to action inside of your content. And this is where your content begins to generate leads for you. Now, the call to action can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. So a simple call to action would be providing something like a PDF or a diagram that summarizes the piece of content, because chances are your ideal prospect is going to want a shorter version of all the information that you're freely providing to them. So that's on a very basic level, one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is provide a Excel sheet that helps them track or automate a piece of whatever process that you're helping them with. And of course, there are a lot of different types of offers you can make, but what's most important is the offer makes sense in relation to the piece of content. And we'll get to an advanced strategy at the end of this little tutorial here. You just want to make sure that the progression makes sense and that it is in fact a bonus on top of the content as opposed to needed in order to make the content work. So you definitely never want to hold something back from the content just because you want to make them a lead magnet offer. And so once you have that CTA, you have everything you need to begin to make your content marketing sales funnel. And the final step is actually promotion. And this is a big part of what makes this content sales funnel so effective. So what you do is you drive traffic directly to your 3 cornerstone content pieces. And ideally, your prospect interacts and engages with your content and then opts into your list via the lead magnet, and then you're off to the races with all of your email marketing and your sales presentations or your free consultations on the back end once you have that lead. For the majority of people who don't opt in, create a remarketing campaign and drive that traffic directly to a landing page that offers the exact same lead magnet, or if you want to get really advanced, you can offer a different lead magnet. And so that does it for the basics of the content marketing sales funnel. And a quick little bonus tip here, as you become more advanced and as you figure out which pieces of content perform the best, your content marketing sales funnel will go from looking something like this to something like this, where you create even more segmentation and highly targeted lead magnets for each piece of your content. Of course, you don't want to go through all this work until you know that one piece of content really is performing from a organic perspective or a remarketing perspective. And that is all there is to it, to setting up your first content marketing sales funnel.
Jason, thanks for taking the time to pull that together for us. I know that you create a ton of content on your YouTube channel, an epic proportion amount of content. So what I want to get you to do is take what you've just pulled together now and walk us through an example. So when you're walking through your 5-step process, letting everybody know how you would apply it to, let's use mortgage brokers as an example, so that you can take your framework and explain it within the context of what we all would be doing day to day, working with clients, so that they can see how you take your framework. And again, I can only say, for those of you that aren't familiar with Jason, go check out his YouTube channel. He creates a ton of content. It's amazing how much quality content he pushes out. So now that we have him on the channel, I'm going to pick his brain and get him to take his process and put it into terms that we all could put to use in our businesses. So Jason, without further ado, why don't you walk us through your 5-step system of the value path, content gap, optimize, and call to action, and then how you use remarketing to pull it all together so that you're able to pull people through the funnel. All right, take it away, Jason.
Okay, of course. Thank you. And thank you again so much for having me, on your channel. So the first step with a mortgage broker, you of course want to figure out which particular prospect or ideal customer you want to target. So in this particular instance, let's just say you're going to be targeting first-time home buyers. And so the value path of a first-time home buyer represents, where they are now, just figuring out what goes on with all of this, everything that they're figuring out when it comes to purchasing a home. And of course, mortgage is just one part of that bigger picture. And then moving them along to where they're actually comfortable doing business with the mortgage broker. And so one of the very first things that you want to identify, of course, is, what are all the objections or questions that a first-time homebuyer would have? Well, one of them would be, why work with a mortgage broker versus a banker, right? Because they may or may not have a banker, or they've been with a bank, 5 or 10 years. So what's to stop them from just walking in and doing business with a bank versus, going to a complete stranger and asking the mortgage broker to, figure out which mortgage to have. So the first piece of content that I would recommend doing would be the mortgage broker versus a banker. And so you essentially want to create a piece of content that brings them from, I don't know the difference between the two, why would I do one versus the other, to the result of they are very confident that, hey, I should work with a mortgage broker, I should not work with a banker. And so that I kind of blended the two steps together. So we have the prospect, which is the first-time home buyer, and then we have the content gap that we're going to fill, the first piece of content, which is the banker versus the mortgage broker. And so once you have that, what you want to do is, depending upon your medium, step number 3 is to make sure that content is optimized. So I'll go through YouTube or a blog post, because those are the two that I really play with the most. So for a blog post, what you'd want to do is you want to make sure that you have all your meta tags and a headline that's optimized for SEO, but you definitely want to make sure that you always keep in mind that user intent as well, because you definitely don't just want to keyword stuff your content or keyword stuff your headline. And so what's really important is to make sure that not just having that keyword in the content, but also having related keywords and keyword phrases. So using keyword research tools or something like Answer the Public, you want to make sure that you don't just have mortgage broker versus banker, but you also have other keywords and other phrases and questions that are kind of related to that. You kind of have the keyword in the middle, and then you have different phrases and questions that you want to include in the blog post. Now, when it comes to YouTube, you actually want to do the same thing with your description and tags. So you'd actually use those same lists. You want to make sure in your description you have plenty of those related keywords and those related phrases, and those search terms and related phrases also in your tags as well. And once you have that down, the next step is figuring out what your call to action is going to be for this piece of content. Now, in this particular instance, a great call to action would be to download a calculator or PDF that would show the person how much money they would save as a result of working with a mortgage broker versus, working with a banker. Because one of the big selling points of mortgage brokers is that they can shop around. You have multiple offers, you have multiple different financing availability, whereas with a banker, it's just one bank, they give you an offer and it either works or it doesn't. And so that could be a great call to action. And when it comes to the last step, which is remarketing, there are really 3 different things that the ideal prospect could do when they come to the content. Number 1, they could read the content and then just leave. They could read the content, they could click the call to action link and then not enter their name and email to get the free calculator or free PDF. Or they could, come to the content, go to the landing page and enter their name and email. Now they're much more of a qualified lead. And depending upon the action that they've taken, you want to do different things with whether you're doing, Google AdWords, YouTube remarketing, or, Facebook remarketing. So it's important that you have, your pixels and tags on each one of these pages. So for someone who comes to the content but doesn't opt in, the best course of action would be to hit them with another piece of content via Facebook remarketing or AdWords remarketing, right? And then if they go to the landing page, but they don't opt in, then you can try offering them a different lead magnet if you already have another lead magnet, or you can just offer the same lead magnet again to the exact same landing page, or run some split tests to see maybe they want the offer, but something on the landing page kind of turned them off, or maybe they just didn't have the time to opt in. You really don't know, so you definitely want to test that. And then for someone who actually hits that thank you page, they read it, they click the link, they opt in, they hit the thank you page, then you want to have a process for that mortgage broker to follow up with them, because that's kind of the most qualified lead, and that's the one that they really want to focus on, where the other 2, you probably just want to set up a bunch of remarketing and not really focus on those too much, and really focus on those people who hit that thank you page. So that's kind of like a real quick summary of how you could take that 5-step process in a apply it to a mortgage broker.
That's awesome. So again, guys, if you're watching this, you got to understand this is something that is tremendously valuable to our clients because most of them are operating their business. They wake up in the morning thinking about operating their business. They're not necessarily tied into this whole content funnel concept. They'll understand it if you explain it to them, but the value add that we are bringing is walking them through a framework that starts with the buyer journey or the value path, figures out what that ideal buyer needs to know, creates content in each of those steps so that you're moving them through that sequential process, getting them to opt in, optimizing the content for them, ultimately hitting them with a lead magnet or a content upgrade, and then pixeling them all the way through the process. If we set that up for clients, basically what ends up happening is marketing becomes a system that is sequentially heating up their prospects to the point where they're an 8, 9, or 10 in terms of likeliness to want to buy their product. And that's what they're paying us dollars to do for them. So Jason, thank you so much for simplifying this down for us so that people really understand from a content expert like you how a framework attached to this process makes it really easy to add a tremendous amount of value to our clients. Really appreciate for you taking the time. Guys, if you're still watching this, definitely give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, drop them below. Jason and I are happy to engage with you here on the channel. Jason, where is the best place for me to send people to find you online? What should they be looking up on YouTube? I'll make sure to link to it below, but if you want to give us the actual URL or where to look, I'm happy to have you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. Yeah, the best place to find me is on my YouTube channel. It's just Jason Whaling. So youtube.com/Jason Whaling, or you can just search Jason Whaling on YouTube. And that's where I do, 90% of my content, and I read and reply to every single comment as well over on my channel. So
awesome. Thanks a lot for joining us today on the channel.
Thank you.